The boy came into Coal Bend with a mouth full of dust and a belly echoing like a hollow canteen. His name was Jude, though no one asked it. 8 years, maybe 9, hard to tell through the grime on his cheeks or the way hunger carved shadows where childhood should have lived. He moved like smoke, unnoticed, his thin legs carrying him past sun-cracked storefronts and silent men perched on porches with eyes like stone. Coal Bend wasn't kind to ghosts or the living. A railroad town that never got the rails, it baked under a bitter sun and buzzed with flies and judgment. Jude drifted toward the bakery, drawn by the buttery warmth bleeding through the window. He pressed his small hands to the glass, watched as Mildred Cray pulled a fresh loaf from the oven, steam rising like prayer. "Off with you," she snapped, eyes sharp beneath a crisp bonnet. "You don't belong here." He didn't answer, didn't plead, just backed away, staring at the bread like it owed him something. A man beside her muttered, "Should be a law against stray children, same as stray dogs." Jude turned down an alley, crouched behind the saloon where the trash was sometimes kinder than people. His fingers fumbled through a half-eaten biscuit, and for one breath at a time, he felt almost human. Then came the boot. A flash of worn leather struck his ribs, sending him sprawling into gravel. He didn't cry out, just curled inward like a paper in fire. Wes Crowder towered above him, stinking of bourbon and rot. He was a man that wore violence like a second skin, drunk most hours, bitter all others. His voice slurred, heavy with spit. "Little beggar rat. You think scraps come free in this town?" Jude didn't answer. His mouth tasted like iron. "Should teach you not to sniff where men spit." Wes's boot lifted again, slower this time, as if savoring the power. Around them, the street watched in silence. Eyes behind curtains, mouths full of denial. A man on a bench across the way coughed, looked at his boots. A woman guiding her child crossed to the other side. The boy whimpered, not from the pain, but from the vast and hollow truth that no one, not one soul, would stop this. Except one. Across the way, seated on a porch that hadn't been painted in 10 years, sat Elias Boone. He was not a tall man, nor loud. His bones were carved from stillness, his silence honed over decades. A broad hat shaded his eyes, but his gaze was clear, watchful. Hands calloused, resting on the handle of a worn hickory cane, he looked like he'd been part of the porch since God made wood. He did not rise. He did not speak, but he watched. Wes saw him. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face, but vanished like spit on a skillet. "Ain't none of your business, Boone," he barked across the street. "This town don't need more strays." Elias's fingers curled tighter around the cane. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. The wind picked up, tugged at the brim of his hat. And still he watched. Wes leaned over Jude and whispered something cruel enough to twist the boy's face. Then he turned and staggered into the saloon, the door swinging shut behind him like a gavel. The street exhaled. Jude lay in the dirt, unmoving, not out of pain but shame. His body knew to curl like it wasn't wanted. A dog whipped too many times. Elias Boone didn't move right away, still as dusk. Then, slowly he stood. His boots thudded against the porch boards like a verdict. He crossed the street with the kind of quiet that made men nervous, not from noise, but from the lack of it. Jude flinched when the shadow covered him, then looked up. Elias didn't speak. He crouched, not an easy thing for a man his age, and examined the boy like a blacksmith appraising a cracked horseshoe. Not pity, something older, something heavier. "You hurt?" The boy didn't know how to answer. He shook his head. "You hungry?" That one he nodded to. Eyes wide, silent. Elias reached into his coat and pulled out a piece of jerky wrapped in oilskin. Held it out. Jude stared at it like it was a trick, then took it with both hands. "I ain't your father," Elias said plainly. "Ain't your savior either. But you don't lay in the street on my watch." Jude nodded again, chewing slow. Not for taste, but to make it last. Behind them, the saloon door creaked open. Wes Crowder stepped out, wiping his mouth with the back of his sleeve. He stopped when he saw them, Elias kneeling beside the boy, hand resting lightly on the cane. "Well now," Wes sneered, "didn't figure you for the babysitting type." Elias rose, turned slow. No fire, No fury, just that same unwavering gaze. Wes took a step forward, swaying. That's your new charity case, Boone? You forget what happened last time you tried savant someone. A pause. The street held its breath. Elias's voice came low and measured, like thunder under sand. I didn't forget. You think I ever could? Wes blinked, thrown off by the answer. Elias stepped forward once. You put your boot on a boy too small to fight back. That don't make you a man. That makes you what a man buries. Wes's hand twitched near his belt, but Elias didn't flinch. Didn't need to. You want to raise your voice? Elias said, soft as wind through pine. Then raise it, but do it from across the street. For a long second, the world tilted. Wes looked around, expecting laughter. Back up. Found none. The town's eyes were back now, peeking from corners. This time, not with apathy, but something else, waiting to see what Elias would do. And in that pause, in that silence, Wes realized he'd already lost. He spat in the dirt and turned, muttering, "Old fool." The saloon door shut behind him. Elias exhaled. Looked back to Jude. Come on, you can sit a while. Ain't no shame in that. Jude stood, staggered, but walked beside him. And that's how it began, not with a rescue, but with a refusal to look away. As they reached the porch, Elias Boone said nothing more. He just opened the door and let the boy step through first. The morning crept into Coal Bend with a gentler hand than most. A breeze stirred the brittle grass, and the sun climbed slow, as though reluctant to illuminate the sins of the town. At the edge of that dusty world, Elias Boone's ranch stood quiet and wide, every fence post straight and deliberate, every shadow in its place. There, on the worn porch rail, sat a tin cup of milk and a warm biscuit wrapped in a threadbare cloth, left out not with ceremony, but with intention. Jude found it before the dew had dried. He approached on bare feet, cautious as a fawn. He glanced toward the door, then toward the horizon, half expecting a trick. But no one stirred. No trap sprang. The milk was cool. The biscuit still held warmth. He sat cross-legged in the dirt and ate slow, chewing each bite as if memorizing it. Not once did he smile. Not once did he weep. But something behind his eyes shifted. Something brittle turned pliable. Inside, Elias watched from the window. He made no move to interrupt. Mercy, he knew, worked better when unannounced. Later, Jude lingered near the corral, watching the horses with a longing that made his spine straighten. The boy didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, his words came quiet, cautious. He moved like someone expecting to be struck, but his eyes missed nothing. You know horses? Elias asked, not looking up from the saddle he was oiling. Jude shrugged, watched a few. You got hands for fixing things? Jude considered. Guess so. Elias handed him a rag and pointed to a cracked stirrup. That was the whole conversation, and it was enough. They worked side by side, the air heavy with the scent of leather and dust. Elias didn't ask where Jude came from. He didn't need to. Boys didn't show up hungry unless life had already taken its swing. What mattered was the now, the work, the rhythm, the slow unspooling of trust built nail by nail. By the time the sun bent west, Jude had patched 3 fences and earned a second biscuit, which he accepted with the solemnity of a man receiving a verdict. That evening, they sat on the porch. Elias smoked a corn husk roll-up while Jude cradled a tin mug of water like it was the finest whiskey in the territory. The quiet wasn't awkward, it was sacred. 2 souls with splinters in the same places, finding a kind of peace in not needing to talk. But peace in Coal Bend was a short guest. By the 3rd day, the town began to notice. A boy seen fetching water from Elias's well. A child riding side saddle with a bundle of fence posts. Mildred Cray saw them passing and clucked her tongue loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. Ain't right, she whispered to Reverend Tolliver, who nodded sagely, though his eyes betrayed curiosity more than concern. He's too old to raise a stray, she added. That boy could be anyone. He ain't anyone, a shopkeeper muttered. He's trouble waiting to wake. Soon the saloon talk shifted from card sheets to Elias Boone's sudden charity. Words like strange, foolish, and dangerous floated like cinders through the town. The whispers didn't bother Elias. He'd outlived louder storms. But Jude heard them, every murmur, every sideways glance. That afternoon, after finishing repairs on the barn door, Jude sat beneath the cottonwood tree, whittling a piece of driftwood with a borrowed knife. Elias came out, limping slightly, and lowered himself onto the porch step. "You've been awful quiet," Elias said, not unkindly. Jude didn't look up. "They don't like me." "No, they don't," Elias replied. "You care." Elias leaned back, studied the sky. "If I care what they thought, I'd never have married my Rosa. She was Choctaw. They hated that more than they hate you." Jude's hands paused. "What happened to her?" he asked. Elias looked down at his weathered palms. "Fever took her. Then war took my boy." Neither of them spoke for a long while. That night, Elias brought out a worn pair of boots. Small but sturdy, scuffed but clean. "These were his," he said. Jude stared at them like they were relics. "You sure? They don't do much good in a box." The boys slipped them on. They fit well enough. He didn't say thank you, but he stood a little taller. That gesture, quiet as it was, rippled out far enough to reach the saloon by sundown. And as whiskey loosened tongues, Wes Crowder heard the tale of Boone's new bootlick. The liquor soured in his gut. He pushed his chair back, knocking over a spittoon, and staggered to his feet. "I'll be damned if that old fool's gonna raise some gutter brat, while decent folks bury sons." No one stopped him. Wes found them at the well. Jude, drawing water, Elias watching the horizon, face like stone. "Well, ain't this a picture?" Wes called out. His voice cut the air like barbed wire. "Boy in my boots, sitting on my land, drinking my air." Elias turned slowly. "You lost something?" "I lost my temper," Wes growled. "And I found it looking at this charity case." Jude took a half step back, eyes narrowing. "You want to raise your voice at a child?" Elias said softly. "That what makes you sleep easy? You don't tell me how to be a man, Boone. Hell, you ain't even one yourself. You think Taquine and some mutter race is what you lost." Elias's grip on his cane tightened. "I think it's better than becoming what I hate." Wes stepped forward, hand twitching near the handle of his belt knife. "Maybe you need reminding where your place is." Jude moved without thinking. Between them, arms wide, just a boy but standing firm. Elias reached out, rested a hand on his shoulder. "Calm, grounded." "Back off, Wes," Elias said. "I won't ask again." Wes looked at the boy, at the old man, and for the first time saw something that unnerved him. Not fear, not rage, conviction. He spat near their feet and turned. This ain't over. But it was. He just didn't know it yet. Elias watched him go, then looked down at Jude, whose breath came hard but steady. "Full move," he muttered. Jude looked up, a flicker of pride beneath the dirt. "I learned from the best." For the first time, Elias smiled. A storm broke the next morning. Nothing of rain, but of whispers and shame, of old ghosts stirred from their shallow graves. Cold Bend wore its judgment like a badge, passed from porch to porch in coffee spoons and tightened lips. A boy in Boone's home. A boy wearing Boone's dead son's boots. It didn't sit right with them, though none could say why without looking themselves in the mirror too long. At dawn, Jude was already mending a fence rail split by the night wind, boots digging in his soft dirt, arms moving with practiced rhythm. His face bore the same set as Elias's, stoic, patient, weather-worn by things most children never carried. Elias stood by the gate, hat low, pipe between his teeth, watching with quiet reverence. He didn't see a boy anymore. He saw kin. The quiet between them was full, not empty, like a song without words. But quiet has a way of making noise when the wrong kind of trouble rides in. By noon, the posse came. 5 men on horseback, dust curling behind them like suspicion. At the lead was Reverend Tolliver, stiff in his collar and full of godly intentions. Behind him rode Mildred's son, pistol at his hip and justice on his tongue. They stopped at the edge of the ranch, just past the cottonwood, where the air still remembered better times. Elias stepped forward without invitation. Jude straightened behind him, eyes locked on the preacher. "We come peaceably, Elias," Tolliver began, but the town stirred. "That boy, he's not kin. He's not yours." "I didn't know decency needed blood to be justified," Elias said. "You can't keep him," Mildred's son snapped. He don't belong to you. He don't belong here. Jude flinched, but Elias didn't. He belongs somewhere. That's more than most folks get. The preacher cleared his throat, face softening into something that pretended sympathy. There's a place in Sutter Ridge. Orphan's home. Clean beds. Discipline. God's order. Elias shook his head. That boy's known enough discipline. What he needs is a life. This isn't your choice to make, Tolliver said. Elias took a breath, so deep it pulled the past up with it. You think this town will heal by throwing out the broken parts? He asked. You think hiding hurt behind sermons and laws makes it righteous? He stepped down from the porch. When my son died, he said, voice catching like a loose hinge, none of you brought me bread. None of you sat in the dirt beside me. But this boy stood between me and violence with hands that still shake at night. That's more man than half of you've ever been. The posse murmured, unsure now. Elias's cane struck the porch with a final tap. If you want him, you'll have to explain why. And if you're wrong, you'll see me in your dreams. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. They didn't ride off in shame. Not yet. They left with unease chewing at their boots, muttering something about time and law, and just checking. But they didn't return. That night the air was still. The wind died. The stars came down low, as if listening. Jude sat on the porch rail, legs swinging, boots dusty, eyes scanning the horizon like they belonged to someone grown. I ever tell you about the time I broke a horse wild as sin? Elias asked, easing into his rocker. No, sir. She kicked so high, I thought the moon'd fall out the sky. Took me 3 days and a busted rib to earn her trust. But when she gave a whole. Jude nodded, the meaning clear without spelling it out. After a while, Jude spoke. You scared of dying? Elias lit his pipe. The ember glowed like the last word in a long prayer. Used to be. Not now. Why not? Elias stared into the dark, the kind that carried voices from other lives. 'Cause something live after me now. Not my name, not even my blood, but you. The boy went quiet. Then, I won't let you down. I know. Later, Jude fetched an old blanket and draped it over Elias's shoulders. No words, just the soft weight of love made visible. That night, something shifted in Coal Bend. Mildred Cray found her bread wouldn't rise. Tolliver dreamed of his father's hands, calloused, kind, long buried and long mourned. And Wes Crowder? Wes didn't dream at all. He came in the blackest hour, smelling of rage and rot. No horse, just boots pounding like thunder down the ranch trail. A knife glinting in his palm, gripped tight like a grudge. He didn't yell, didn't knock. He meant to end it quiet. But Elias was already waiting. The front door swung open before Wes reached the steps. Elias stepped out slow, cane in hand, a rifle slung across his back. Not drawn, not needed. The moon carved silver lines across his face. Should have killed you when I had the chance, Wes muttered, voice like wet gravel. You already tried, Elias answered. Jude stood behind him now. Not hiding, watching, ready. You take that boy, Wes said, and it's like you're mocking what I lost. I ain't mocking anything, Elias said. But I won't mourn beside a man who made his pain a weapon. Wes stepped forward, then froze. A sound rose from the barn, hoofbeats slow and steady. The town had come. Lanterns bobbed down the road. Figures on horseback, on foot. Mildred, the preacher, the shopkeeper, even the drunk from the saloon. They'd seen enough. Wes turned, saw the lights, the faces, the quiet reckoning in every eye. You siding with him? He barked. No, Tolliver said. We're siding with the boy. Something in Wes cracked then. Not loud, just a small, sad crumble. The kind of break no man admits. He dropped the knife. He walked away. Jude didn't cheer. Elias didn't smile. But the night exhaled. Weeks passed. The town changed. Not all at once, but enough. Jude began school, quiet but steady. He rode fence with Elias and laughed once in a while. Not often, but when he did, it rang like spring water on canyon stone. The boots wore smooth. The boy grew into them. One evening, under a golden sky, Jude sat beside Elias, watching the wind roll across the hills. You still miss your son? He asked. Elias didn't answer right away. Then, I miss who he'd have been. But I see parts of him when you talk to horses, or fix a rail without being told. He's not gone. Not really. Jude leaned against him, small-shouldered, old ribs. And Elias, grizzled, tired, carved from weather and time, rested his hand lightly on the boy's head. For a long while, they said nothing, but something sacred passed between them, something unbroken. And if you're ever in Coal Bend, ask around. They'll tell you about the boy who stood in boots not his own, and the man who gave him a place to grow into them. And if you listen close enough, you'll hear it whispered like gospel. Sometimes love doesn't need blood, just the courage to stay.